As somebody with a relatively small channel that's grown pretty quickly in the last couple of months, I don't think anyone would be super shocked to learn that I've had a couple sponsorship offers thrown my way. I'm not personally opposed to taking a sponsorship, and my approach with other creators is generally that they should try and get that bag as long as the company isn't actively harmful in laundering their reputation or products through the creators. However, a big issue with sponsorships and how they're handled is that brands kind of have all the power. They don't tell you the rates up front or even their general ranges, they just ask you to submit your rates to them. If you overprice yourself, you'll be ghosted, and if you underprice yourself, they'll just take advantage of you. My first offer was from a VPN company back in January, right after my channel blew up, and I turned it down because I was worried that I wouldn't really be able to guarantee the performance of a future video that might have a sponsorship, and I wouldn't feel comfortable setting a rate since I didn't know what would be fair to me. The second offer I got was from an infamous mobile game company earlier this month, and given how much I know they spend on this stuff and how much it might impact my credibility to accept a sponsorship from them, I sent them back a pretty absurd rate, and I have not heard back. However, on April 18th, I got my third outreach from a sponsor. Kinda. The topic of this video is a company called Monroe, an app/website whose goal is to make it as easy and painless as possible to connect brands to content creators for sponsorship opportunities. I had never heard of this company before, and odds are you probably haven't either. If you try and look them up, there's not a lot about them, and their website is pretty minimal. However, I didn't find them by trying to look them up. They found me. On the 18th, one of their founders, a man named Johnny Nets, reached out to me by Twitter DM asking if this would be the best place to contact me for sponsorship deals. I ignored him because I thought it was a scam, but on Wednesday he followed up again asking if I would prefer to be contacted via email rather than Twitter DM. So I said sure, why not? On Thursday morning, he told me he would have someone named Sarah email me about it. And sure enough, on the 20th, I got an email from Sarah telling me that they have 3 clients, Opera GX, Z-League, and Buff Game, who are looking for YouTube creators to do 30-second segments by the end of May. She said she saw my channel that morning and thought I might be interested, which is weird because their founder was DMing me about them 2 days ago, but whatever. And she asked if I would be interested in joining these campaigns. I was, I think understandably, a bit skeptical about this. However, I am also a very broke bitch, so I figured what's the harm in feeling this out? I sent back an email asking for more information on a bunch of different elements that I wanted to know more about. Things like their conditions for any sponsorships, like performance conditions, monetization, where it needs to be placed in the video, how much editorial control they'd want over it, stuff like that. I also asked for some information about what Monroe would be getting out of this, since they mentioned on their website that they take a 10% cut of deals that are made through their service. But since this wasn't being done through their service, it was being done, by directly contacting me, I wanted to know what was up. Put a pin in that, by the way. I never set up an account on their service or agreed for this to be facilitated through Monroe. This was all being portrayed and presented to me as something that was being handled directly and privately between me, Sarah, and these sponsors. Anyways, Sarah gets back to me an hour later to answer some of my questions, but not all of them. That's honestly fine, whatever. The main one that was an issue for me was that they did not specify what their actual commission rate was going to be on this, and I didn't really want to push it. Also, critically, she mentions that there are no strings attached and that they'll just continue to shoot brand opportunities my way if I'm open to it. Put another pin in that. I replied the next day and said fine, submit my channel to these brands for consideration and to tell them what rate I was expecting. The stipulation that Monroe's commission would be on top of my rate, not taken from the rate that I was charging, and that it was contingent on reaching an agreement with the brands. I'm not going to share my rate here because unlike Monroe, I don't want to actually expose my rates and potentially screw myself over in the future. Foreshadowing is a literary device. I mentioned that I don't love how brands handle this, and that I would be fine with a counteroffer if the brands felt it was appropriate. Sarah responded an hour later telling me that she actually recommended that I cut my rate by 25%, and she said that it was my choice, but that was her recommendation. She followed that up by explaining a little bit more about how payment would work and asked for details about my channel's demographics. I had assumed that this was because these specific brands had requested this information and that the future campaigns line was referring to this data only being provided for Sarah to use to find campaigns I might be good for, not that it would be openly provided to brands. I replied on the 22nd and just said fine, tell the brands that my rate would be what she had suggested plus her commission rate, and sent along the demographic data as well. On the evening of the 23rd, I got an email from Sarah letting me know that I should have received 3 confirmation emails from Monroe letting me know that I had been submitted for these campaigns. And that was where I actually got a bit confused. Like, why would I get confirmation emails? This was supposed to be handled directly. I didn't go through their service, I went through Sarah. So, I checked the confirmation links, and let me tell you, I was absolutely not expecting a whole list of everyone who is apparently waiting for approval for a sponsorship from these brands. I never made an account through their site, and I did not approve of them making one on my behalf. Nonetheless, it looks like that's exactly what they did. And probably not just for me either. I didn't seek out a sponsorship with these companies. Monroe was actively seeking me out for one and then misrepresents it to make it look like I had been approaching them first. On this page, you can go back and see everyone who's applied for one of these campaigns, including links to their channels, the day they submitted, and the status of their offer. There's also this fun little block of blurred text next to each offer. 3 guesses what that's supposed to be. If you're not a complete idiot, you probably put 2 and 2 together and realize that must be people's rates. Information that, as a content creator who's considering sponsorship deals, you don't want out in the public because it means that the already unequal playing field between creators and sponsors just got even more unequal. If that information is made public, then anyone who's interested in getting a sponsorship from these people would be able to look up what they've charged in the past and operate based off of those numbers. Something that, for the record, doesn't really go the other way, at least not on any large scale, because creators are frequently prohibited from sharing the offers that their sponsors make as part of the contracts they sign, or they just don't want to share it because they want to keep that private for obvious reasons. On top of that, the whole point of a sponsorship is that a creator is providing value to the brand and product by attaching their name to it. Yes, it is an ad, but it is an ad that's specifically being presented as an endorsement from the creator in some way, and the creator's name adds value to the sponsorship. Monroe's approach to this whole thing means that brands get free value because anyone with the link can go to the page and see, oh, hey, Vivros wants to work with Opera GX. That must mean Vivros is okay with this company, like he's on board with it. And then that person's consumer choices might be swayed by that, even though I'm not getting paid and I haven't made any sort of an agreement with them. And sure, like I'm a smaller creator, it's not like there's thousands of dollars in value that I would be getting out of this at this level, but what if I was a larger creator? Put another pin in that. I sent another email to Sarah expressing my concerns half an hour later. First, that the end date for these campaigns were April 25th and April 30th at the time, not the end of May like she had said, and that I wouldn't be able to do them if that was the case. I also said that I was under the impression that Monroe was, I don't know, an agency, and that their offers to connect me with sponsors were about connecting me directly with them, not publishing my information for anyone to see, and I explained why I found that to be a problem. I followed that up by saying that I wanted to be immediately removed from Monroe's stupid public leaderboard thing for this, and that if it was impossible to do that without being withdrawn from consideration, then I wanted to be withdrawn from consideration. I also mentioned that I was concerned that the blurred text in my submission was my rate, and I made it clear that at no point did I ever consent to my rates being shared with anyone except for the brand. And that I was especially concerned because Sarah had encouraged me to lower my rates, and now my lowered rates felt like they were going to be made public. I ended by saying that I wanted to be taken off the mailing list if this is how Monroe was going to operate, and that I expect my privacy in negotiating a business deal to be respected. 7 minutes after I sent my email, I got a reply telling me that I would have my name removed, and confirming that the blurred figure is my rate, but it would only be presented to the brand and Monroe. Nobody else would be able to see that rate. Put the very biggest pin in that. She also said, quote, now that we know you're interested in us presenting options to you, we'll explicitly reach out when a brand is interested in collaborating directly with you. And that was a real red flag to me, because remember that pin from earlier about how I never created a profile or consented to one being created on my behalf? Turns out, they must have. Presumably they created it to submit an application to those campaigns through their app/website, whatever this thing is, which, again, I never said they were allowed to do, and they gave no indication that they would. I also never consented to them actively trying to operate as a middleman for me using the data provided. This was supposed to be a no-strings-attached agreement, and saving my data so you can create a profile for any prospective sponsor to view without my consent feels like a bit of a string to attach. I also didn't realize until after the fact that this is what Sarah had meant when she'd asked for my demographic data, because again, I had thought this was just about me and her working directly in regard to these sponsors. At most, I thought that she might use that data to connect me with sponsors, but not that that data was going to be uploaded to some sort of a profile on my behalf without my consent on Monroe's service, or that it would be made available to anyone and everyone who might just want to take a look through it. Like, I don't know what conditions there are for somebody to get on the brand side of Monroe, and what happens if this ends up being a company that I can't trust to keep my data private. Another pin, please and thank you. I replied to Sarah 15 minutes later asking, quote, how would a brand know to reach out to you if they're interested in collaborating with me? I haven't agreed to be represented by Monroe as an agency. I did not create a profile for myself on your website, and I did not consent for one to be created on my behalf using data communicated under a reasonable expectation of privacy for anyone else to browse through at their leisure. I am genuinely concerned at how data communicated to you in confidence has been apparently handled by Monroe, and I do not want to work with anyone who seems to have so little concern for my privacy or respect for our negotiations. Please delete my information from your service immediately, as I did not give consent for it to be used in this way, and I want to make it clear that Monroe does not have the right to source sponsorships or negotiate on my behalf. Any attempt to do so, or to share the data communicated in these emails with a prospective sponsor, would be done explicitly against my wishes. Sarah responded 15 minutes later, saying, quote, sorry for the miscommunication. Most of the creators who are interested in our program want us to present them to other brands. We don't negotiate on anyone's behalf, simply provide the brand with a profile to review. Now, couple things. First of all, I never expressed interest in your program at Monroe. This was being handled over email, privately and directly, and at no point did anyone say, hey, just so you know, this is going to be handled through Monroe or through their website. I never created a profile and did not want to create one, but one was created on my behalf. Secondly, very convenient that Sarah's wording ignores the part where I said that I did not consent for my data to be used this way and that I never agreed to give Monroe the right to source sponsorships for me with it, or indicate that they represent me. Reaching out to me with a deal? Fine, whatever, like that's okay. But using my data from a specific sponsorship deal, or at least the premise of a specific sponsorship deal, and sharing it with any and every other sponsor who decides they want to take a peek? Very different. My rates vary depending on the product in question, the length of the ad, and what I feel comfortable with. When the unnamed mobile game company from earlier asked me for a sponsorship, I told them that my rate was in the 4-figure range, and that was true for them. They wanted a 60 to 90 second integration, which is a lot, and it was for a product that I thought might make people feel particularly turned off of my channel because of how obnoxiously prevalent their sponsorships are. That is going to cost extra. Telling everyone my rates without any context and sourcing sponsorships based off of that is a real issue. However, they did as they said they would, and they removed me from their leaderboard thing. As of today, I have no idea if they've deleted the profile they made of me without my permission, and I have no way to check, but at least I'm not listed publicly under these brands' names. I was pissed, but I was prepared to move on. And then I told a friend about it, in fact the person who's making the subtitles for this video, and he decided to take a look, and what he found is why I'm making this video. Now, when I got put on the leaderboards, I scrolled a little bit, but not all the way to the bottom, and didn't really pay any attention to the names. I was mostly just concerned that I was on this. Today though, when I told my friend about it, he decided to go take a look. He went to the link of the campaign page that I had sent him, and he was able to view the entire list of people. And he found some things that got me to take a second look too. First of all, there are some fairly big content creators on there. Some of these channels have millions of subscribers, and I am baffled why they're bothering with Monroe. Some of them are even people that I actually recognize, like Sleepy, Asmongold TV, and Mr. Top 5. Not even necessarily because I watch them, but because they're popular enough that I've heard about them around the internet. Secondly, and most importantly, he went and looked at the bottom of this list of creators. Remember how we put that big pin in that bit about how people's rates would be kept private? In the email Sarah sent me, she specifically said, quote, "The blurred figure is your rate, which is only presented to the brand, brackets, and Monroe. Nobody else is able to see the rate." Anyways, turns out that was a fucking lie. If you scroll down further, you'll be able to see creators who are either accepted and the integration is, quote, in progress, or that the, quote, brand declined. On most of these entries, but not all of them, the creators' rates are publicly listed. Now, I'm not going to be revealing the names of any creators here whose rates were exposed, but I am going to show you some of the rates that these companies accepted and rejected, specifically Opera.gx. Opera apparently accepted one offer for $6, another for $12, a third for $1,000, a fourth for $550, and then they rejected two, one for $25, the other for $60. That's not only a clear violation of like the basic level of privacy you would expect in business negotiations, it also shows that Sarah straight up lied to me. Even if I had had my offers rejected, my rates would have been made public. Not every creator has had their rates publicized, such as this person named Miss Mellow, who apparently had their offer accepted, but somehow still has the rate hidden. It's possible that maybe this is some sort of an optional setting that some people chose to take advantage of. However, I wouldn't know because I never created a profile. Even if it's optional to display your rates, the option should very much so not be set to display them by default for everyone, and you absolutely should not be displaying people's rates by default when they don't even have profiles to try and turn on or off a hypothetical setting like that. This is wildly egregious behavior, and it should be seriously concerning to everybody, and if you're a content creator who had their rates exposed by Monroe, you should be pissed. There aren't rates online for what is or isn't a normal price for your channel. It's really hard to figure this sort of stuff out, and you're kind of just expected to know inherently what the value of a sponsorship on your channel is. I personally set my rates pretty high because I value my own videos highly, and I'm fine with not getting a sponsorship because of that. However, some of these people have had it put out into the open that they will run a 30-second integration for a big company for $12 fucking dollars, an outrageous ripoff that absolutely should not have happened. And you might be thinking, okay, but Vivros, you were sent these links directly. They don't show up on Monroe's homepage or anything, and if you try and Google these pages, they don't show up. It's not good that it's being shown to other creators because it is still a violation of privacy, but at least the only people who can see it are other content creators who've applied, right? I'm not even going to tell you to put a pin in it, we're just going to get right to it. After me and my friend found out about this, he created an account on Monroe. Upon putting in his email address and selecting a password, not even like inputting a YouTube channel or anything, he was immediately directed to a page containing links to all 3 of the active campaigns they have, and he was able to scroll down and see all of this without applying for any of them. Anybody can do this. And like I said, some of these content creators are massive, either in terms of their raw numbers or just like their popularity in a specific community. Mr. Top 5 has 4.4 million subscribers. Do you want to know his rates? Well, they're not public yet, but I'd bet that Monroe is going to make them public pretty shortly, given how it seems like every application for the Opera GX campaign seems to have either been accepted or rejected by the 12-day mark, and then prices start to be revealed. What about Sleepy? What about Fernando? What about all the other people who've had their rates submitted with the expectation that these rates would be kept private because that is how professionals operate, and maybe even because Monroe openly lied to them the way they openly lied to me about it? Well, if you've got 5 minutes to kill an email address, you can go look, as can anyone else, including other brands who can use this data to undercharge content creators in the future. If I were a brand and I had no morals or ethics, I would be looking through these lists and snatching up every cheap content creator on it. These people are offering integrations for less than the cost of a combo at Subway, and Monroe is taking advantage of that. Also, not for nothing, remember Johnny Nets? We mentioned him earlier as a founder of Monroe. If we look at his LinkedIn, we can see that he previously worked at a company called Rematch as their CEO and co-founder, a company that offered prizes for competing in gaming tournaments. That company was acquired by Z-League in early 2022, and he lists his experience with Z-League as, quote, growth, marketing, and strategy, which I assume means he was the director of those things. If you recall, Z-League is one of the 3 companies offering campaigns on Monroe. Wonder what that's about. Anyways, the important bit of this video is that this behavior is shitty. Companies like Monroe take advantage of the fact that a lot of creators, especially small ones, don't know their value and are easy to convince to undercharge when it comes to sponsorships. Monroe also takes 10% off the top of every deal made through their website, or 5% if you agree to pay them the low rate of $20 a month, which, insane. Now, Monroe doesn't say anything about how much they charge brands to list a campaign on their site, but just like all the gig economy companies that Monroe seems to be trying to emulate here, I'd assume that they're getting paid both ways, despite really being nothing but a middleman who does not respect the people who are on their apps. Creators should just stay away from companies like this. If you want an agent to represent you, totally fair, find a real agency, not this what if Uber Eats but for YouTubers bullshit. If you're a smaller creator, and I would consider myself to be one too, this sort of thing is built to take advantage of you and your work under the assumption that you don't know enough to know your worth. At the bare minimum, you should always have an expectation of privacy when it comes to these negotiations, and if you're one of the creators who's applied for a campaign through Monroe, I genuinely suggest contacting them and telling them to remove your application. If they haven't already, they are almost certainly going to make your rates public, and companies like this who demonstrate just a profound disrespect for your privacy and value don't deserve to skim 10% off the top for their lack of effort. And if you do have an agent and they somehow signed you up for this bullshit, find a better agent, someone who's going to put in a little bit more due diligence when it comes to sourcing your sponsorships. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this rant. I need to end this here because this was a very spontaneous video and I don't have the time or energy to make a whole video essay out of this, and we're going to be going back to the normal-ish upload schedule starting next Friday. Be sure to like, comment, all that good stuff the algorithm craves, and I don't know, if you enjoy video essays about video games, subscribe. If you're a creator, what kinds of bullshit have you dealt with when it comes to sponsors? And did Monroe reach out to you too? Let me know in the comments down below. Last thing, just a reminder, channel members are going to be voting for 2 of these 5 video essays to be made in May, and if these sound interesting to you, you can snag a membership for $5 by clicking the join button below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around soon.